We'll go week by week. Okay, the file will also be given to you in your PDF format. There's some issue with the font, but in the PDF font is better. Don't worry for that. So we'll go week by week. Every week, however so many classes will be there, you will be provided the PDF files in advance, mostly on the, like, every week will, like right now for next 2 weeks, this week and next week, there will be 3 classes every week. So that I just don't want to put too much pressure on you in the first week and 2. But after that, we'll try to wrap up at least 5 lectures every week. So how we'll do it? For example, this is the first of this week, so you'll get all the material for the week in advance, okay? And then we'll work it out. So that's how we're going to proceed. I'll try my best that you don't have to refer anything else beyond what we give you in the classroom, okay? So precisely right from look, it's a very simple thing. You will be getting to know a lot of stuff, lot of things, but political science is one sub-subject where there is too much fuss. What is fuss? Any idea? What is fuss? Anything like which is not required. Okay, political science has a lot of stuff which is not required, and sometimes when you are reading on in the starting phases of reading political science, you're like, okay, fine, this is important, this seems to be important, but 6 months or 10 months into the preparation, you feel like seems like for the examination that was not required. Yes, for example, whenever you go to home, you switch on a television also, you see a lot of stuff, 90% of it is politics only. So sometimes you feel, okay, fine, I have read about legislation, this is it. Okay, there is a struggle, there is something going for reservation on the screen, so I have read the reservation policy in my class, so let me just look into it. Now the idea is very simple, that yes, that is true, that will be helpful if you keep a tab on things, but primarily for this examination, the overview has to be such that you have to focus on the class notes, materials, and try to imbibe characters so that you can write the answers of the questions which have been asked, okay, in the previous year paper. And if you can do that, you will be able to write answers in the coming examination also. Don't think too much beyond that point, okay? If you will do it, you will read a lot, but you won't be able to pen down the things on the paper, which effectively is the main objective in the coming year. Fine. So for this whole course, consider this course as a single point thing, that okay, like this, notes will be provided, the questions, the answers, everything will be discussed, okay? So you don't have to go here and there, buy this book, that book, don't have to do. All the book which is available, I have done it, I have read all of them, and I'll tell you what to read, what not to read, okay? Because what happens, half of the time you will go, okay, fine, a friend of mine has taken up that book, a friend of mine has taken up that book, this book, that material. It all goes haywire 2 months into the preparation. We're like, okay, now I have too much books, I am not be able to read anything. So just don't do it, okay? So we'll start now. Any questions, anything right now? Everyone have either watched or have attended that lecture, that orientation lecture, okay? So you people have the basic idea now, that okay, there are 2 papers, and every paper, 2 papers, each paper has 2 parts, okay? Clear? Yes. Okay. Fine. So let's start with some very basic stuff. When we are going to talk about political science. So what is political, or where the word comes from? Okay, any clue? Like, you must have heard about politics at least. Don't look at notes or handouts, that is there, you don't have to write much, but just think about it, where the word politics comes from. Or you must be having a subject in GS called as polity also. So sometimes it seems like it's very connected or something. So where does this word comes from? Huh? Any idea? Anything? A Greek word. Yeah, it's a Greek word. So look, basically the world in which we live, it all goes back to the way of life or the modern society which we follow. Is basically, we always say that we follow the norm and dictats, the fundamental rule and regulations which are part of Western political thought. You don't have to go either in the word of political or not thought. I'll explain you those things later. You need to understand that the Western way of life, okay, is basically which has been accepted by most of the people in the world. Even the Chinese and the Japanese, who consider that no, we have a far more Eastern way of life. If you see their way of structuring their government or their city state or their country, they are still influence of this very system, which first evolved in what we now call as Greece. Okay, so the whole thing goes back to there. So you need to understand that it's a more of a historical thing, or it will make more sense if I'll tell you like a story. Like, everyone knows that population has increased over the period. Back in the day, there were not this much people. So back in the day, what the place called as Athens, these are called, in as per the Western society, the initial cities where people established and started residing, living, and all this thing. Okay. Now, in these initial cities, initial place where people gathered and started living in a structured manner, okay, where trade started establishing, okay, all the city for the first time evolved. People realized that we need to have a certain set of decorum, certain set of rules and regulation which we will follow. Fine. Now, what are these rules and regulation? That particular set of group of people will decide. Now, it was seen that very soon there were different ways in which these people started living. Suppose there are 50 people, suppose there are 100 people, suppose there are 500 people, suppose there are 10,000 people. For example, Aristotle, about whom we'll study in this class and series only, Aristotle once said that a city-state should not have, under any circumstances, more than 8,000 families. A city-state, under no circumstances, should have more than 8,000 families living. Now, what is 8,000 families? 8,000 families, like the building you are right now, maybe if you just go on the backside, there will be more families than 8,000 families, right? So what has happened is that the whole exponential population growth has led to development of the society in a very different manner. But the crux, the basic fundamental principle remains the same. What is the basic fundamental principle? That there have to be a certain set of rules and regulations which everyone has to follow, and then only there will be benefit for all. Even if one person goes beyond and started taking things in their own hand, started doing whatever the hell they wanted to do, then what will happen? There will be crisis. Suppose imagine, suppose if you have freedom, and you have absolute freedom, okay, you can do whatever you want, okay, will it be good for you? Yes or no? Yes. Will it be good for rest of the people here? Just imagine, if he is allowed to do whatever he wants, will it be good for everyone else? No. So that means there has to be rules and regulations, and if it is applied on him, it should be applied on all. So there is a certain set of rules and regulations which have to be made. Okay. Now, the word political comes from the ancient Greek word that is called as politikos. Okay, that's written in your handout, you don't have to worry. Okay. Anything and everything which is related to a city state. Okay, so the rules and regulation is what is polity. The people who are there who have to maintain the stability of the city are called as polis. Okay, everything evolves from there only. Okay, so that is what first of all you need to understand. Now this is a basic idea when what we call as etymological origin of the word political. Okay, so like everything has a etymological origin. For example, if everything has an origin point. Okay, every word everyone knows. So now coming to basic idea, this is a basic principle where it all started. Now if that is a basic principle, then what is politics in current day and time? Don't think about some big thing, just think about what should be politics in current day and time. What is politics in current day and time? What should it be? Suppose if you have to define politics, you will say that it's a system through which society is regulated. A system. Okay? Now it has been seen in the latest times or recent time. When I say recent time, it means like last 50, 60, 70, 80 years. Recent times in the political sense, because we have started our story from 2500 years back. So from that perspective, recent times can be 100 years. Okay, so in the recent times, to be very precise, after 1945, it has been seen that the main job in hands of the administrator, whosoever he or she is, or group of people they are, is distribution of resources. Now this is the latest definition. What is the job of politicians? Anyone? What is the job of politicians? What is the job of politicians? Represent the people. Okay, so that's more about the representative structure. That's a different concept. That's kind of a characteristic feature of democracy, that politicians will represent people. That is a characteristic feature of a democracy. That's a different thing. You tell me that what's the job of politicians? Politicians in a representative democracy have a job to represent people. That's one thing. But effectively on a larger scale, the job of politicians is to again regulate and make sure that the wealth and resources of the society are equitably distributed. Not equally, equitably. You cannot give everything to everyone equally. You will give them as per their need, as per their requirement. Right? So equitably distributed. Now it has been seen, like recent times you see the politicians around you, you see the politics which is happening around in the whole country. What is the elections just happened? You saw the manifesto of the parties. Okay. So what it is all about? It is all about distribution of resources, isn't it? That if we will win, we will give this thing in this manner. If we will win, we will do X in Y manner. Through which we will make sure that more people can get access to the resources. Right? So in a way, in modern time, one can say that that is also a definition of politics. Now, if you will see that in your handout, it's written Harold Lasswell, the third line, underlined, it's in the first page on the top. Harold Lasswell wrote a book called as Politics, Who Gets What, When and How. That's the name of his book. And in this he explained that political science is the study of changes in distribution of value pattern in the society. Okay. So now politics, on the top it's written, is about managing and regulating a community. How you will manage or regulate the community? Why the community is going to listen to you? Point number one, because community needs stability. Point number two, because everyone in the community needs resources. So even if their selfish interest is there, they will follow you because you are effectively in charge of all the distribution, right? So keeping in mind this thing only, after 1945, you will see Harold Lasswell the scholar, he wrote this book in which he explained that now we have gone through the idea of political. So he explained what is political science. The political science is basically going through and understanding how this whole politics work. Okay, what are the theories, what are the rules and regulations through which you are going to make a plan for this distribution, and it is all about this only. Okay, so this is a very basic concept. Let me explain you further. For example, you see, you must have heard about words like socialism, communism, capitalism. You might not be completely aware of the concepts, but you must have heard about them, isn't it? Have you people heard about it? Socialism, capitalism, all these things, huh? So what is this whole idea? In this socialism, capitalism, Marxism, communism, all these concepts, or libertarianism in the modern times, ultimately it's again about distribution. Who has what? In a capitalist society, there's few very rich people, rest of the people are very poor, and the rich people are regulating them. That's the blame. Okay, so again it's a distribution of wealth, distribution of property. Okay, in the commune, a commune, even not about Karl Marx, a normal commune, the distribution of wealth is equal or moving towards equality at least. That is again distribution of resources. Wealth is still a smaller term. The bigger term is resources. Okay, if I'll tell you that suppose you don't have any money, or I'll give you a better example. What do you think the Prime Minister's salary is in the country? Anyone? What's the salary of the Prime Minister? Near about 4 lakh something. The President has 5 lakh, and then Vice President 4.5, something like that, and then 4 lakh, nearby 4 lakh rupees is Prime Minister's salary. Now 4 lakh rupees is not a very big amount, frankly. Okay, so 4 lakh means annually he gets something like 48 lakhs, less than 50 lakh rupees. Just imagine about it, 50 lakhs. That's frankly more than they spend on every visit when he goes not outside the country also. And the Prime Minister has to move from one district to another district. Okay, the resources which have to be taken, the planning which has to be done, that takes much more than crores and crores. Okay, so his salary is not much, but he has an authority through which he can move resources, he can mobilize resources. Okay, so that's why he is powerful. So money, or even the general sense of wealth, is not the exact word which will define your capability, your authority. It is your capability to mobilize resources. You must have seen, not about Prime Minister, around the world there are so many people. Many times there are so many spiritual gurus and babas and all these people. Okay, why they are given importance? Because they don't have wealth on their own sense. If you'll ask that Pope back in Vatican City, how much money he actually has? No, nothing. But the symbolism of his authority is such that he has the capability to mobilize resources. Okay, so that is where the political power lies. We'll talk about that later on. So that's a basic thing you first of all need to understand about politics and what political science is. That's a basic idea. Now one basic, we'll go into further more definition. There is also an issue like whether we can say why we should even call it political science. When we say sociology, when we say philosophy, we can also say politicology. Why we are calling it political science? We'll go into that debate also. That's a whole debate. But for the basic principle, since it's the first lecture and we are going to study political science, you need to have a workaroundable definition of political science. Suppose in the evening someone asks you, okay fine, this was the first session of political science, what the hell it is? You should be able to tell at least, okay, no, political science is basically the set of schemes and rules through which we try to analyze how the distribution of wealth or distribution of resources among the society or in the society happens. That's a very workaround definition. Okay, so that's one thing. Now, how this whole thing happens, as I was just telling you, they gave you the example of Pope, or I gave you the example of the Prime Minister, because this mobilization of resources then is related to the power. Who will be able to do this mobilization of resources? In an exact word, there is a more legitimate word called as authority, but we will work for it again. There's a difference, basic differentiation between power and authority, but the lump sum fundamental word is power. Who will be able to mobilize resources? One who has the power. Okay, and power can be a lot of types. It's always not required that you need to have legitimate power. There are people with illegitimate power also. There are people who are dons and gangsters and whatnot. Even they have power. There are people who have a legitimate position in government. They also have power. Then there are instances when don and gangsters end up in government and they have too much power. Okay, but that's a different thing. So it is also about power dynamics. Okay, so ultimately, and this is the basic thing, you will see in the longer run that in modern times, in the times we are living, the whole concept of politics is always looked from the perspective of power dynamics. There are very different ways of looking at politics. You can look at politics from the perspective of doing well for the society. You can look at it from the perspective of a feminist origin. Okay, but effectively in the modern times, the most acceptable form is power dynamics. We always try to look at politics from the perspective of power dynamics. Fine, so you keep that thing in mind. Now let's come to the very basic division, and that is why political science. Now, in this, I won't be teaching you why. This we have already discussed, why you have to take political science and all that. But why it is even called political science. And this is also something which can be asked in the examination. So why it is even called political science? Any idea? Why it is even called political science? It could have been called anything, like I just told you. Look, psychology or sociology. Okay, so logy is a word which actually means study of something. Okay, so when you start reading about society, you called it sociology. When you start reading about psychic things, you called it psychology. When you start reading about the whole metaphysical world, that the world beyond the realm in which we are living, we call it philosophy. Okay, so why don't we call it politicology? We can call it politicology also. Why we are not calling it politicology? So write it to UPSC, changes politicology and international relations. Any idea? It makes sense now. Like if the study of that very thing, we are studying about politics, so you should call it politicology. Why we are not calling politicology? So there are two reasons for it. One is the real reason, which I will tell you, but you cannot write anywhere. Another, there are 4 or 5 points which will be objectively told to you and you have to write those things. Now, what is the real reason? The real reason is very simple, that in the before 20th century, there was no scope, no place much of political science. I'm not saying that people were not studying politics, obviously. As Aristotle have said, that political science, this very study of politics, is the archaeology, like basic fundamentals on which every other science is based. That's Aristotle's point. But so people are studying political science from 2005 years back, 100 years back. So the time the first few people must have sat and decided that look, we need to make rules and regulations for the society. That was also a study on its own. That was also the study of politics. But until 20th century, no one really cared to give it a defined name. And in the 20th century, to be precise, after the First World War, you will see that people were in awe of this new things, the science. science as an empirical science, right? That we have to look things into numbers and perspective. So that is where the whole experience, the importance of science came to place. And people started using science everywhere, frankly. Okay. And since the study of politics was given a more structured orientation in this period only, it was more acceptable that people started calling it political science. Fine. That is the real reason. Okay. After First World War, it all happened. The study of international relations also started after First World War only. For the very first time, any university started teaching international relations officially. As there was a school, there was a department, there were people who were teaching international relations, there were students who were getting enrolled to study international relations. That all happened after First World War only. But it doesn't mean that no one was studying international relations. Okay, it was just that no one gave it an official frame way of doing it. Fine. So the actual reason is this, very simple, that look, in the mid of the 20th century, or even in the second quarter of the 20th century, the term science was hip. People accepted it. Okay, like let's do political, but in the scientific manner. Okay, but if you write that's not the way to write it. You just can't write, look, in the second quarter it was hip, so they went for it. Okay, so you have to explain words like that. In the 17th, 18th and the 19th century, okay, in the 17th, 18th and the 19th century, there were historical tools which have been used to study of politics as other schools or other things, other subjects was. But in the 20th century, it was seen that we can move towards empirical methodology. What is empirical methods? Number system. Okay, like you want to get things in exact precise manner, that empiricism. Okay, basically. Okay, like empirical values. If like suppose if whenever you try to get exact precise value, empiricism comes in fact. Okay, for example, how should I, yeah, like for whole of school of computer science is an empirical school of science, because everything is done in the binary language. Even everything is ultimately goes to the binary language, the machine language thing. Okay, so it's all in 0 and 1, so you exactly know what it is. So obviously in political science we can't go to exactly 0 and 1 system, but we try to go as far as possible to the scientific values, and that is a scope which have been followed until 1980s continuously. We'll talk about it in detail. So that is the reason why it is even called as political science. Okay, so a lot of scholars will be there, whether it is a political whether it is a science or not. The study of politics is a science or not. Please write it down. The study of politics is a science or not. The study of politics is a science or not. Just, it's not written in your handout, so please, I'll just dictate few words. Please make a note of that. The study of politics can be considered a science. Study of politics can be considered a science as it involves systematic analysis, empirical data analysis, and theoretical framework. Period. However, it also it also encompasses normative analysis or normative questions. However, it also encompasses normative questions and subjective interpretations. Okay, and subjective interpretation. Now, so what it says political science in modern time, we say, because we use theoretical framework, we use empiricism, we use regulatory body things and all that, but at the same time there are also normative questions. What are normative questions? How, lucky, whenever you feel like a word is getting difficult, you try to trace its etymology and it will become easy. Normative words come from norms. What are norms? Society have norms. There are many rules and regulations in your society which you don't know the reason for, but you follow it. Why? It's a norm. It has to be done. This is how it is done, right? So there are certain things which we actually don't know the reason for, and there are a lot of huge things. Even now there are majority of things in this world which we don't know the reason for. No science has ever been able to evolve with a correct answer for a lot of questions, and it's from all the subjects, all the fields. So there are normative questions. The biggest normative question is in the world is why we are here, what is beyond the realm in which we are, is there anything? Okay, but these are philosophical questions, we don't have to get into it right now. But there are normative questions. For example, in political science, the biggest normative questions is why even we have to do good for the people. Effectively, what is there? If some people will die also, effectively everyone is going to die. Why we are even bothered? So there are normative questions. Normative questions means these questions doesn't have any theoretical framework. This question doesn't have any empirical background. These questions are there and we don't know why they are there. Simple as that. And we don't know the answer also. We'll only get to know why these questions are there when we will be having the answers for these questions. These questions are there through a normative process because there are norms for it. Okay, so that's a basic thing, basic idea which you have to write. Just write one write this name, Max Weber, Maxweber. Okay, Max Weber, for those who don't know, he was a very famous sociologist. He has actually also worked on Indian people, Indian Oriental model, how Indian people live. He has also worked on that in the 19th century. Okay, but you write here, his quote is, Max Weber has argued politics is a vocation. Politics is a vocation about distribution of power. Politics is a vocation about distribution of power. Okay. Now, in your handout, there is a standard definition of political science also written. Fine. The science entails systematic inquiry, building towards an even more highly differentiated set of ordered proposition about empirical world. Whenever political happenings are measured or assessed on these terms, should come under the scope of political science. Fine. Let me give you a better example. Elections just happened. Now, have you people seen exit polls, or no one has seen exit polls? The day elections got over, there were people on news channels telling that who will get how many votes. I've not seen it. Yes or no? Yeah? You haven't seen it? She outrightly that no, I don't see these things. Fine. So what is that? So these people are trying to do a data analysis of the political process, right? What is political process? The whole process of electioneering or the whole process of election is a political process. These people are trying to use the data analysis to predict the outcome of the election process. Okay, they are using a empirical formula. They are performing a mathematical scientific model. Okay, they failed this time, let it be, but yeah, that's a thing. Okay, they did well in like the thing is not wrong. Okay, exit polls have worked. In India they don't work, people are corrupt. The rest of the places they do. Okay, the British election just happened 2 days back, and the exit poll predictions were precisely correct. Okay, so that's one thing. Now, so what is that? That is a thing, part of political science. The whole model, the whole study of election is there is a field called as psephology. It is called as psephology, but effectively it's a part of political science. Okay, because we are using empirical method, we are using a theoretical framework. Okay, so that's a part of political science. Now, when we have to study politics, now this much made sense? Okay. Now, when we are studying politics, okay, so the study of politics has to be done, to be defined in different manners. Okay, if you see, political study of politics also includes study of philosophy, but not much, a little bit. Okay, so study of politics can be called as part of study of philosophy, and then the political science part. Okay, political science part. Now, I have given you the definition of political science. So if the study of politics, I have explained you through political science, then why we are talking even about study of philosophy? A little bit of philosophy is there. Okay, not too much, but in the initial few classes you have to. Now, why philosophy? Because look, what is the ultimate objective? Think about it. Why we are even bothered? What is the ultimate objective? The ultimate objective is precisely the same which it was 2500 years back, or even maybe Vedic period or early Vedic age, every time throughout the history of humankind. The ultimate objective has always been same. What is the ultimate objective? Bataएं, think about it. What is the ultimate objective? To create a better place. Okay, to create a better place, to create a scenario where everyone can excel. Okay, Socrates, the teacher of Plato. Everyone knows Plato? Okay, so Socrates, the teacher of Plato, used the word eudaimonia. Okay, we'll talk about it. Eudaimonia, which defines a place where everyone is fruitful, everything is excellent. That place is eudaimonia. Okay, even in modern times, in 21st century, Amartya Sen is there. He is also talking the similar lines. Amartya Sen came up with his whole model in which he said, talked about capability building. His theory is about capability building. He said that for making a better society, this is Amartya Sen's model, what we should focus on, developing capabilities in each and every individual. If every individual is capable, has a certain skill set through which he can earn his living also and can make a world better place. Effectively, the end result will be a better place for everyone to live. So what it shows that I'm not comparing Amartya Sen to Socrates, that's not too much, but the thing is that whether you are talking about 2500 years back or whether you are talking right now, the ultimate goal is always the same: making the better place for everyone to live. That's a basic goal for everyone. Whichever philosopher, whichever political scientist you will talk about from here till the end of the course, the ultimate aim of everyone is making a better place to live for everyone. That's it. Okay, when we will talk about Karl Marx, he says that when there will be dictatorship of the proletariat, when the workers will rise up and take over everything, there will be equality and everyone will live happily ever after. When we are talking about John Locke, J.S. Mill, Hobbes, everyone talks about this very ultimate goal. Their roots, their ways can be different. For example, we'll talk about him. Thomas Hobbes is a scholar from mid of the 17th century, English scholar. He talked about that, look, there has to be one supreme person, and that not person but one supreme authority, and that authority he called state, and everyone should follow the norms and rules made by the state. And then what will happen? We will live happily ever after under the guidance of the state. So effectively, the basic fundamental idea is the same. When we are talking about Socrates or when we are talking about Plato, again the same thing. We'll come to Plato, we'll come to Socrates, we'll come to Aristotle. They all say the effective ultimate goal is the same. The better place to live. Fine. Now we are talking about the better place to live. We also need to define what is this better place. If you, from past 2500 years, we are talking about at least the known thing from Western perspective also. From past 2500 years, we are talking about better place to live, which the early Greek scholars called as eudaimonia. Now, what is this better place to live? Everyone is saying, okay, great. We are talking about better place. Okay, we'll go on Netflix. There's a comedy show called as the Good Place. Okay, that's the movie, the thing shows that when they die, they went to a place called as the Good Place. This is something like that. Okay, so effectively, the better place or the good place, what is that? Do you know what is good or what is better place? Do you know any idea? What is a good place? When everyone can afford a wedding like Akash Ambani? No. Yeah, tell me, what is a good place? At least everyone is invited to that wedding? No. Okay, fine. Tell me, what do you think? What is a good place? What? The basic necessities are taken care of or fulfilled, basically. Okay, that's your work. But is fulfillment of basic necessities enough, or do you also aspire to grow further? So that means that fulfillment of basic necessities is not enough. The state or the authority, whosoever it is, should also take steps to provide you the opportunity to grow, right? So what happened? Her expectation of a better place evolved within 30 seconds. She started 30 seconds back with the basic idea that my basic requirements should be fulfilled and I'm happy. But within 13 seconds, she's like, no, I also need further development. Okay. Do you know in most of the countries, why the governments fell? Or in a democracy, you will always see, you might have heard about the word anti-incumbency. After 10 years or 15 years, it is like, no matter how good a minister or prime minister or president is, after 2 terms or 3 terms, they have to go out. Why? Because people, their aspirations keep on increasing. You can never satisfy the aspiration of all the people all the time. Okay? So, the idea is very simple, that this better place to live, the idea is very subjective. This is very subjective. Even you don't know, I don't know. It's all relative. Yes, if I was in 1920s Germany, when there was a Great Depression, or 1923-24 Germany, when there was a, not Great Depression yet has arrived, but the situation was very bad in the aftermath of Treaty of Versailles, all I needed was, I should get 2 times meal and some clothes to wear and a head on my head, a floor on my head, and something like a heating system, because it's pretty cold. But if you are living in 21st century Germany, that is not the thing you want. Okay? In 1947-48 India, your expectation was something else. In 2020 to 2020s, you don't want that thing. You need something more. So your expectation of a better place keeps on evolving. So if it's keep on evolving, then political science has no answer for it. Because we are talking about empiricism, na? In science, we are talking about empirical methodology. And if you keep on taking your goalpost forward, then you will be never be able to achieve it. And therefore, the political science is incapable of telling you in precise, exact terms what is a better place, what is a eudaimonia. But philosophy is capable for it. Right? So to develop this understanding that what we want, or to even evolve this understanding, which I just told you, that look, we need to understand this thing, that we will keep on taking our ultimate goal up and up and up. That is something which is defined by philosophy. Once that is defined, then things becomes easier, a bit more easy. Then everything else can be done by political. Okay, so you have a small definition here of political philosophy. It encompasses reflections on the origin of political institutions. Okay, this is what you need to understand for your syllabus. The definition, the basic idea for getting the political philosophy, the philosophy part into your syllabus, I have told you to get that thing. But in examination, you please write this thing, that the political institutions which have been established, they have been established for the very thing, that is to understand what is the good place, what is the better place. Okay, and the origins or the basic fundamental idea behind those institutions is known only through political philosophy or the study of philosophy. Now, what are these institutions? These are not, when I'm saying institution, it doesn't mean CBI and Enforcement Directorate. Okay, because most of you people might have went through the polity class. So when I'm talking about institutions, you will think like that. No. The whole state is an institution. Right? The whole state itself is an institution. So the very presence of the state is for the better place. Right? So the philosophy, the political philosophy is talking about these bigger questions. So we will see afterwards, and this is very important because after this we'll jump into the study of what Plato stated, what Aristotle stated, what Socrates stated, on all these things. And over there we'll understand the basic logic, that at the end of the day all of them were talking about state, how we can improve the state, and why we have to improve the state, to make a better place. Okay, is it making sense? No? Yes? You can tell me. If it doesn't, I'll explain it again. Is it making sense? No. Let me explain it again in a simpler word. Look, all the political philosophers, all the scholars about whom we are going to discuss in this whole, in all these classes, are going to talk about the same thing. That is how to make a better place. How they are going to do it? They have to tell that, okay, take 1, 2, 3. These 3 steps have to be taken and this whole world will become good. Fine? What are these 3 steps? Or what things they will be requiring? So that is where the state comes. That, okay, fine. If a philosopher says that do X and Y and Z. For example, Plato stated that we will take away all the children of the society from their parents, and will make a big place, and all the children will be living together, and no father, no mother will get to know who their real children are, and the state will take care of all the children, so there will be an equality. And the father and the mother, all the fathers and the mother, all the man and the women in the society will treat all the children equally, and there will be equality. So never implemented, but it was his perspective. So that was a way he suggested to make the world more equal. Fine. So that is the reason. If Anyone has heard the word Aflatun? Aflatun. Yes. Where you have heard this word? Huh? Like, bhul gaya. So Aflatun is a Persian word which was then inculcated into Urdu, and that's why North Indian people usually know it. Aflatun, Toon is synonymous to being a madman in modern times. Okay, if we are talking in standard Hindi or Urdu, and if you have to tell someone that ye pagal hai, people will say that Urdu mein. In Urdu they will say that he is Aflatun. Aflatun is nothing but it's a Persian name for Plato. Because of these kind of ideas of his, okay, people called him, people made his name synonymous to madman. Okay, but what I'm saying is that's a tool he suggested. Okay, so if you are suggesting a tool, you also need an institution to implement the tool. Okay, the steps he suggested, okay, will keep all the children together. Fine. Who is going to do it? You need a body, you need an institution. That institution is your government. So here the government is still a smaller thing. We'll talk about the bigger thing, that is the state. Okay. So the Indian Union is a state. Okay. Government is a part of it. Right? So that is how it works. So in the study of politics, first of all, you need to understand that we need to focus on political philosophy. Okay, once we have understood the basic idea that what is a better place on who all talked about how we'll reach there and all that, then we'll jump into the section of political science. And in political science, then we have 4 different things. Okay, this is where your syllabus actually starts. So you will have political thought, political theory, comparative politics, and international relations. Right? You have 4 things: political thought, political theory, comparative politics, and international relations. Now, this is basically which is covered in your paper 2. Well, I'll give you a basic idea. This is what we have to focus right now. Now, what is a political thought? What is a political theory? That comes as in, fine. So, what you can understood about? Let's build it like that. Everyone has heard about the concept of Swaraj or Ahimsa. Gandhi ji used to talk about Swaraj and Ahimsa. Huh? So, what it meant by Swaraj or Ahimsa? Tell me, like Ahimsa. Ahimsa is non-violence. So, when Gandhi talked about non-violence, okay, it was his conviction. Okay, and like first, let me tell you the logic of non-violence. It's a very pragmatic idea Gandhi came up with. Look, the Britishers always ruled the whole world from a point of dominance, and they have this white man's burden theory. Anyone has heard about it? White man's burden theory? What it is? So the Britishers came up with this obscene of a concept. They said that the white man is the civilized man, and they have the responsibility to provide this knowledge of civilization, or to develop and propagate the idea of knowledge of civilization to the black man, to the brown man, and to the yellow man. Okay, so they have this, they're very good on colors. So yeah, so basically this is what they said, that we are the civilized one and we will tell you how to be civilized. Fine. So Gandhiji came up with this idea that we will protest against the Britishers, but in the most civilized manner. So suppose if 2 people are fighting, imagine in front of your house 2 people are fighting, they are quarreling and one person is telling the other one that, sir, please tell me what happened and why you are cursing me. Another person is like started arguing or cursing or started even beating up the first person. Whom you will consider civilized and whom you will consider uncivilized? The one who is cursing or one who is using violent means will be considered uncivilized, right? If there is one person who is saying, sir, please tell me, if there is a problem, we can sit and resolve, obviously that person won't be considered uncivilized. Okay, so Gandhiji plan was very simple, that look, these people are developing their whole model on the fundamentals, then we are the civilized one. If we can create a situation where we will be looking civilized, this whole charade which they have built will be gone. So that's where the whole idea of ahimsa and satyagraha and everything comes in. But that is his belief initially, that look, if we'll follow these things, this will happen. So it was his thought. Later on, what we have seen, that the very idea which Gandhiji used in India was used by Martin Luther King in 1960s in United States. If you don't know, the Civil Rights Act of 1964-65 was passed in United States after the famous protest, the sense of protest which started in 1955 and went on until 1964. Okay, and then the Civil Rights Act was passed in United States, and Martin Luther King was highly influenced by the ideas of satyagraha and ahimsa. We also saw something very similar happening in South Africa, okay, under Nelson Mandela. So initially the idea was evolved as a thought with Gandhiji, but then the tools, the techniques which he implemented over the period was evolved into a theory and then used by a lot of other people around the world, like King and Mandela. Right? So what happened? Initially it was a thought and it evolved into a political theory. Now the model of ahimsa is a political theory. But when it started with Gandhi's idea, so it was it's a part of Gandhi's political thought. Okay, so it's in your text, we'll come to it, but this is a very basic idea which you need to be aware of. Okay, the very basic difference between what is a political thought and what is a political theory. Okay, one can always say that a political theory usually evolves from a political thought. Fine. So that is something you should know. If you will just see here, there is a difference between political thought and political theory written, and the very example which I just gave you is written here, that political thought is like Gandhi's idea of satyagraha, which means peaceful standing up for what's right. Gandhi believed that non-violent protests could help India gain freedom from the British rule. Now what is political theory? The evolution of the study of these Gandhi's idea and the tools he evolved and then implementing it in other scenarios is basically political theory. Fine. A scholar's name is given, Gene Sharp. Gene Sharp is one of the famous American scholar. What the important thing is, like, this is also how you should study the subject. Like, I'll tell you about Gene Sharp. So Gene Sharp is an American scholar and you can quote him at empty amount of time when you're talking about Gandhiji. He has extensively worked on Gandhi's model of satyagraha, ahimsa, all around the world. Okay, so Gene Sharp, theories of non-violent action provide a broader framework for understanding. He studied satyagraha and evolved that, okay, no, satyagraha can be used as a theoretical model and can be implemented anywhere. So you will see that not like, for example, there was a farmer protest 2 years almost back. The farmers were sitting more than for a year, okay, on the Sindhu border, okay, and then the government changed the law. So it is not only happening in India, it was actually happening in Canada also. The truck drivers were on a strike in Canada and they were also doing something on a similar lines, that we won't harm anyone, but we will just sit here. Okay. The French do it in a more different manner. They sometimes throw shit at their leaders, but that's a different thing. But yeah, so this is when the same idea is evolved in a theoretical model. Okay, to give you a better perspective of this, let me just give you, like, suppose understand it like this. You took a system, took a thing, group of thing, and you put it in a box, and this is the box. And later on, this thing, whatever it is inside this, is taken out. But the box is still there. The shape of the box is still there. And every time you put something inside the box, okay, your things will also take the shape of that box. It has to, if it has to be kept inside. So theory is like this only. That initially it came from a thought, it evolved into as a model, and that model is used around the world. Okay, so that is what political theory is all about. Right? Now, there are 2-3 other points. For example, there is a scholar called as Andrew Hacker. You'll see it in the notes. He argued that political theory, in ideal terms, is a dispassionate and disinterested way of looking at a set of rules and regulation. As a science, it will describe the political reality without trying to pass judgment of what is being depicted, either implicitly or explicitly. It describes the rules of conduct that will secure a good life for all of the society. So that model is political theory. The concept evolves from political thought. Does it make sense? The very basic fundamental definition, the difference between political thought and political theory, a lot of people find it very difficult. So please tell me, does it make sense? For example, look, we know in a physics world, we know F equals to ma, force equals to mass multiplied by acceleration, right? Now, when this must have done, it must have been first time someone must have applied some amount of force and calculated the mass and the acceleration which was achieved by the mass because of the application of the force. That was one experiment. But then it was evolved into a concept where F equals to ma was used as a theory. That theory evolved from one incident, one objective. So that one incident, that idea when it was first seen, that will come under the thought. And then from there the theory is evolved. Because in a physical world, the theory make more sense. That's why I'm giving you that example, F equals to ma. Does it make sense? The basic difference between political thought and theory? Yes? No? Okay? Fine. So that's one thing. Now, if it made sense, let's now move forward to the next idea. So the basic difference between political thought and political theory is done. Okay. Now the next thing which we have to understand is where we have to start with the political thought, because the syllabus starts with political thought. Okay. The political philosophy which we are talking about, we will discuss it within political thought. When we will be discussing different scholars, we will discuss their philosophy. Okay. So what is political thought? We have discussed the basic idea. Inside the political thought, there are 3 things, which is political philosophy, political ideology, and history of political thought. There are 3 ways to study this political thought. Either we will just focus on the philosophy, either we will focus on the various ideologies over the period which have evolved. The basic and the fundamental or the most easiest way is to go from a historical perspective. Okay, why a historical perspective? Any idea? Anyone? At least you are happy about it. Yeah. So, any idea why political thought from a historical perspective? Thoughts evolved over time. But look, there is a very famous saying that every scholar is a child of his times. Okay. So, what you are going to write, whatever you will see around you, you can imagine certain things, but that imagination is also within the bound of what you have seen around you. Okay. It will not happen ever that you will think of something which is totally unknown to you. You will take up things from here and there and you will make up something, but that is also in the realm where you live. Okay. So you can just, no one can come up with something which is totally he or she is unaware of. That will never happen. Fine. So some background, something has to be there. So you will always see that whichever scholar we are talking about, the easiest way is you are always taught a little bit about the scholar's background. Okay, for example, you will see around the world. That is the reason actually why when we are reading about any person, we always try to read, okay, where he was born, where he went to school, where he is coming from, and then we focus, okay, what he is saying. Because your background plays a very important role in what you are going to say, what you are going to do. Okay, so that's the basic and the easiest way that the history of political thought also works in this manner. We will always listen and we always go through this historical approach, and this will also make your work easy, because whenever we are talking about any scholar and you know a little bit of history, so you will just able to analyze, okay, this is what that scholar must have stated. If you know the time period in which the scholar was active, okay, you will be able to predict, okay, the scholar must have talked on these specific lines. Fine, that is how it works. For example, you will see that Plato was almost 2500 years back. Okay, then after 1945 there was a scholar, his name was Karl Popper. Now Karl Popper called Plato the first fascist. Who was the fascist? Fascists were people like Adolf Hitler, people like Benito Mussolini. Benito Mussolini came into power in Italy in 1921 or 22. Adolf Hitler came to power in 1933. Mussolini died in 1943. Adolf Hitler died in 1945. These people had nothing to do with Plato. But a scholar after 1945 looked and he saw similarities between the ideas propounded by Mussolini and Hitler and Plato. Now, whether he did or not, or the correctness of that thing, what he saw, is a different thing, and it's a debate. But from his perspective, he saw that, look, what Plato was saying 2500 years back, it's something somewhat similar to what these folks were saying. So he called Plato the first fascist. Fine? Is it right or wrong? Whether he should do it or not? For you to decide, it's also a debate. But what you need to understand, that what he did, he superimposed a modern idea on a historical figure. Okay, so these things do happen. Even to do these things, you need to have the historical idea of who is coming from where. We are able to understand that Karl Popper did explain Plato in the fascist idea only because we know that Karl Popper was writing his book immediately after the World War. Right? Similarly, a huge number of scholars after 1945 talked about liberalism, or talked about open freedom, equality, individualism, these kind of things. Okay, so we kind of understood, okay, fine, the world has just come out of a war, so more importance will be given to individual freedom. That happens all the time. Whenever you are coming out of war, you'll say, okay, now at least I need some freedom. War got over. So you will see, so every time you will talk about the scholars talking in 1950s, you will see that the scholars in 1950s are mostly talking about equality, freedom, liberty, individual freedom, these kind of. Okay, so that's how it works. So anyway, so we will take the history or historical approach, okay, or we will focus on first as history of political thought. Okay, we'll focus on history of political thought. Now, in the history of political thought, you will see that there are basic ideas, the Western political thought and the Eastern political thought. Okay. Now, what you are going to study is basically the Western political thought, and in the Eastern political thought, we are going to keep only to Indian political thought. There are other things also. Okay. There are many other sections. For example, there is a, like for example, everyone knows about Soviet Union, yes or no? Before 1991, Russia was Soviet Union. Okay, and when it was Soviet Union, their whole political ideology was very different. Okay, so they had their own system. The very idea of individualism, liberalism, what we are talking about, they had totally different set of rules and norms. Those rules and norms are not even discussed now. It is not a part of syllabus also. But it doesn't mean that we will say that it never existed. Back in 1950s, 60s, 70s, it was actually taught, even in India. But now it is not needed, so we won't discuss it. But you should at least know that what we are doing, we are picking and choosing. For example, we are going to talk about Western political thought, okay? And we are going to then talk about, in the Eastern political thought, we are only going to focus on Indian political thought, the Indian scholars. In the Eastern political thought also, there can be a lot of people. For example, last lecture I was taking the orientation session, I told if you'll go to Korea, there is a Korean political thought. If you'll go to China, there will be a Chinese political thought. Sinzu will be given more importance over there. If you'll actually go to Pakistan, there will be a Pakistani school of thought, a political thought. Okay, people like Sayyid Ahmad Khan, who is taught a little bit in India, will be discussed in great detail over there. Allama Iqbal was discussed in great detail over there. If you'll go to Bangladesh, there is a Bangla school of political thought. So everyone has it. It depends which country you belong to and where you are applying for a civil service examination, and accordingly you can study. So that's how it works. So in the Western political thought, there are few scholars whom you have to study. It's written, you can go through it. I'll just tell you. We'll start with Plato. Okay. We'll then go to Aristotle. Okay. Then what happens is, after Aristotle, there is a break. Okay. And the break is because the Greek political thought gets over. Now, if I'll give you a basic idea of history before going into it, is even if you start with the Greek society, when the Greek lost the control in the whole Eastern European or Mediterranean region, who got into power? Romans. Okay. But we don't discuss Roman school of thought. It is a hip thing right now. How many people know about Stoicism? Anyone has heard about Stoicism? Yeah. What it is? Regulated kind of life, yeah. Stoicism is a school of thought. Okay, the Roman king Marcus Aurelius used to follow it personally. It was evolved by Seneca and a Roman scholar, and it says that you should develop a personal philosophy in such a manner that nothing should affect you. You should not be overjoyous on good things, and you should also not feel bad on bad things. You should just accept the life the way it is, and then there are various tools and things. So that's one thing which is right now in, again, 21st century, and is, to be precise, in the COVID and the post-COVID, it has become very famous, Stoicism. Okay, but the thing is that like Stoicism, there are other school of thoughts also in the Roman times. We don't study it. Okay, so I'll just make a listing of Western. Look, if you see the Western world philosophically, not philosophically, historically. Okay, so there were the Greeks. Okay, somewhere around 170, 180 BC, the Greeks folded and the Romans came to power. Okay, so after the Greeks, the Romans came. When the power of the Romans reduced, then you saw the rise of the English, 1060, 1080 AD. Similarly, same time the French also rose up in the continental Europe. So after that, the English and the French and the regional power started. But then this period is called as the Black Age or Dark Age. Black Age, Dark Age. Dark Age. Okay, this went to somewhere around mid of the 14th century. Okay, and after the Dark Age, you saw a little bit of rise of Christianity. Okay, and then you will see the period of Renaissance followed by Enlightenment. Okay, and after Enlightenment you will see the evolution of the modern society. Okay, the Enlightenment, we saw the rise of the modern society. So we what happened in the historical sense, let me explain you. It is famously said, the story goes like this, that somewhere around 1340 there was a very big plague in Europe. It is called as the Black Plague. Okay, it was so devastating that almost 1/3 of the European population died. Okay, have you ever seen a pulley system on a well? Wells have pulley system on top of it. Okay, have you seen anyone seen that? Well, with the pulley system on the top, there's a circular ring on the top and you have a pulley thing. The pulley system was actually evolved because there were not enough people to take water out of the well. So they evolved a new system. There were so many people died. Okay. So such was a devastating. Now it is said that after the Greek, the Roman kings, and after the Romans, the society went into the Dark Age. This Dark Age was a period where the European society was thinking and depending on the God so much that they didn't expect anything else. Like whatever good is happening, God is doing, God will take care of it. Whatever bad is happening, God will take care of it. So the dependence or the importance which should be given to normal human beings was not given much. Right? And it is said that the devastation which happened in the Black Plague, or because of the Black Plague in the mid of the 14th century, created the first scenario when the people started resisting. The resistance came in the form of, initial resistance came in the form of opposition of Roman Catholic Church only. Okay, and you will see it imbibed, or it led to the phase of Renaissance. Okay, now what is Renaissance? Renaissance is again the Latin word for rebirth. Okay, but in this Renaissance period, two important things happened. The first thing is the people started looking back from the Renaissance. They started looking back to the ancient writings of the Greeks. This is the time when all the work of people like Plato, Aristotle, there were other scholars also, not like Pythagoras was also there. Okay, all these, Heraclitus was there. All these people and their writings, whatever they can find, they translated. And these translations introduce them that look, it is not as if we have to be overtly dependent on God only. There are a lot of other things the human beings themselves are capable of. So that is the first thing which happened. Because what happens is, look, if I'll tell you, it's a very simple logical thing. If I'll tell you just now that going through or passing the UPSC examination is impossible, you will not be able to do it. Okay. You might feel disheartened. You will say, okay, I don't know whether I should study or not. But if I'll just tell you that, look, in your own family, there are 15 people who are IAS officers. Nothing really has changed. You are exactly the same person which you were like 30 seconds back. But now when you are aware that, okay, there are 15 people in my family who are already IAS officer, there is a sense, no, there's just like that uncle of mine and that cousin of mine who is a moron and an idiot, that person is also an IAS, so I'll also become an IAS. Okay, so that self-assurance comes if you have a background in the things, and it happens to everyone. Okay, and basically after reading the Greek text or getting access to the Greek text or their way of life, the people here got a reassurance that no, as human beings we are capable of doing a lot of things, and we just don't have to dependent on this supernatural powers we are hoping and expecting to. Okay, so that was the first change of idea, change of mindset that happened in Renaissance, and that is why it is called as rebirth. And the second thing is the concept of humanism. What is this? Humanism. Any idea? What is this concept of humanism? Humanism is a concept which says that having faith in the capability of human being. Okay. Like in Indian society also, a lot of people have this idea that whatever is happening, God will take care of us. So you don't depend too much on that. You depend on capability of human beings. No, we will do it. We don't have to be dependent on anyone. We will handle it. You will also see this was the period in the European society when you saw a huge number of buildings and monumental structures were built. Okay. You will also see, for example, whenever you see the Renaissance era paintings, okay, if you will try to Google Renaissance period painting, you will see a lot of times there are nude statues and the human body, male and female, and those are created. Do you ever think about it? What the hell must have happened? Why the people all of a sudden started getting interested in human body that much? Like, something must have happened. Now all of a sudden, like, yes, like half of the time when we have seen those paintings in our early teens, we're like, okay, nude pictures. But coming out of that, you need to understand that they are giving importance to human self. They are giving importance to, like, we don't need to celebrate some supernatural power. We can celebrate the human self and human body only. Okay, so that is, you will see that was visible in the Renaissance society. Similarly, if you will see the structures in the European society in the 15th and the 16th and early 17th century, those big domes and big structure, everything was lofty and humongous. Why? It was so to show the capability of human beings. You get a chance right now also, whether you see the Saint Basilica structure in Vatican City, or you see the structure in Florence in Italy, even now, you will see how the hell human beings made it 500 years back. So it was not only that it has to be built, it was a symbol of human capabilities, and that is how it was done. So all those structures, all those paintings, all these things shows what? It shows the self-belief which was now coming into the human society, into the human beings. Okay, and from here you will see, instead of focusing on the Roman times, the human beings started focusing more and more on the Greek writings. Okay, and all these things, humanism and all those things, evolved in the period of Renaissance and Enlightenment. That is around 1490s to 1650 AD. Fine. And once you have got this self capability, when you are assured yourself of the capability that look, we can do it, okay, then what you will do? You will also talk about running the state, running the country, running the government, right? First of all, so you will see that in all the ancient models, even in India in the ancient times and all, what it was always stated that the king is the representative of God, right? King is the representative of God, or in many cases, king is the God on earth. Even if, like the Thai model right now, the Thailand, if we'll go, the king is called as, the current king, he is called as Rama the 10th. Okay, the Thai king right now, his official name is Rama the 10th. Okay, and he is considered as he himself embodies the God on earth. That's how they see. Now this was the period, obviously what will happen when like it's a very chronological thing. The first thing that happens, your self-doubt got away. You started having faith in the human capability, and then the next thing you will say, okay, fine, if we are so capable, why this one person who is considered to have some godly characters or something, why he or she is basically given all the power? We can on our own also decide these things, right? So you will also see this will be the period where scholars started popping up all around the world, who started talking about that people should have power. Even those scholars who were saying that okay fine, the king should be there, they at least took away the godly authority of the king. We'll talk about Thomas Hobbes, who said that no, king is essential, king has to be there. But he said that the king should be there, but with the acceptance of people. The godly authority which the kings always had, that was gone after that. There was a person called as Machiavelli who came before these things, and he talked more from the perspective of the king. And instead of, like, as the king used to be considered, that kings are the good ones, kings are the ones who should be there to do good, be moral, be ethical. He changed that thing. He talked of something else itself. He said that look, the most important thing for the king is to be in power. Whatever good or bad or anything happens, that all comes later on. The first requirement for the king is to be in power, nothing else. Everything comes later on. Right? So we will talk about the Greek scholars. So what we have to talk about? We will talk about Plato, we'll talk about Aristotle. I will also teach you a few things about scholars who have been there before Plato. Fine? It is not mentioned in your syllabus directly, but there have been instances when they have been asked in the examination. Okay, so we'll discuss about them also. So few of the scholars, I'll just write them, who are considered as pre-Socratic scholars. Okay? Pre-Socratic. Then we'll talk about Socrates. Then we'll talk about Plato, and then we'll talk about Aristotle. And this will be your what we call as the Greek political thought. Okay, Greek political thought. Okay, it will make more sense to you who are these people, but in these four type of sections we'll cover this whole thing. Okay, pre-Socratic scholars. If you will see your handout, there is a mind map. I think so. It's on the page number 6. See, page number 6. There. Yeah, that's a mind map for Greek politics. If is it too small, unreadable or something? You'll get the PDF. Okay, you'll get the PDF. You can zoom it and read it. Too small, no? Yeah, in the PDF it will be bigger. So now if you will see in this mind map, you will see, I'll just open it on the screen. Here. So in this you will have this dotted line. See in your map, the mind map, there is a dotted line. Okay, the dotted line, it's written pre-Socratic scholars and arrow upwards. So all the scholars before the pre-Socratic scholars are not mentioned outrightly in your syllabus, and the chances about things being asked about them is rare. So you don't have to go into too much detail of them. Okay, but at least their name and 1 or 2 points about them, okay, has to be known. That will be helpful. I'll explain how and what all. Like for example, there's a scholar called as Heraclitus, or there's a scholar called as Parmenides. What Heraclitus said, what Parmenides said, those things. Just one line only you have to remember. It's not like you have to go into great detail. Just one line only. Okay. So that's there. Once we have gone through that topic, that mind map will help you a lot in the revision phase. Right now, it might not make sense. So just let it be. Now, coming to back. Yeah. So we have gone through the Greek political thought. Okay, so now once the Greek political thought up till Aristotle is done, then we'll jump. We can skip the Roman political thought because that is how the syllabus is defined. Okay, if later on it will be needed, when one day I'll just give you a small note on Stoicism or something, you can just skim it through because you really don't know. Maybe they will just mention one 10-marker question. Okay, that can happen. No one can deny it. But Greek political thought, and after Greek political thought, then we will just go into the phase called as Renaissance. And the scholars after Renaissance. Okay, so we'll start with Machiavelli. Then we'll talk about Thomas Hobbes. Okay, Hobbes was active between 1641 and 1651. Okay, then we'll talk about John Locke. He was active around 1680s and 1690s. Okay. Then after John Locke, officially in your syllabus, in your listing, it's given John Stuart Mill's, J.S. Mill. Okay, and okay, fine. Marx, Karl Marx. Okay, and then the modern times comes, so we'll have after Marx, number 6, Antonio Gramsci and Hannah Arendt. Okay, now these are the scholars which are directly defined in your syllabus. Okay, they are directly mentioned in your syllabus, so have to be done. But in between there are other few scholars about whom the questions have been asked directly also. So we'll have to do it. For example, between Locke and Mill, there is a scholar called as Jeremy Bentham. Okay, Jeremy Bentham. Now, somewhere around this time only, in 1760, there was a scholar called as Rousseau. Okay? Jean-Jacques Rousseau. Here only, in 1760s, there was a scholar called as Jean-Jacques Rousseau. Okay. Jean-Jacques Rousseau. He was a French scholar. Then there was another scholar whose name is Montesquieu. Okay, 1790s. His name is Montesquieu. Q-double-Q-I-E-U, Montesquieu. Now, these are the scholars which have to be read, which are not directly mentioned, but the questions have been asked in the UPSC exam itself. Okay, so we have to cover these scholars also. Now, once you are done with these scholars, then you can jump to other section. As in, this is just the Western political thought. Okay, the initial thing. And then we can, once you are have a basic understanding of what they propounded, so you will be aware of their political thought. Then we will go to that the theories which have been developed from their thought. That is how we have understood that the thought, from the thought the theory will evolve. So from their idea, their life, their way, the things they have propounded, we will move to the next idea, that how those ideas have evolved into theoretical form, and how, for example, the concept of liberalism have evolved. For example, in modern times, the form of liberalism which we have can be traced back to these two men, John Locke and J.S. Mill. Or the way communism or socialism works can be traced back to Marx and Gramsci. Okay, so once you know their thought, their life, what happened with them, how they came up with whatever they came up with, from there the ideas evolved and we got the various political theories, political ideologies, and then we'll jump into those things. So once you understood these things, those things will become very easy on their own. Like for example, once you understood what happened with John Locke, what books he wrote, what he stated in those books, then reading about liberalism will automatically be very easy. you will, when you'll be reading liberalism, you'll like, this seems to be repeated, because the ideas have been taken from there. The theory has been taken from political thought. Okay, so that's how we have to start. Now, you also need to understand, before we jump into study of these people, you need to understand that what are basic concepts of classics. So what is a classic? Anyone has English literature? Anyone has studied English literature ever? Anyone here who has studied English literature? Yeah. Yes? Yeah. So what are classics? Sorry? High ranked. Rank as in like 1, 2. High ranked. What sense? Give me an example. You are thinking. Okay, think. Yeah. So anyone else? High ranked. He's saying. What are classics? What? And tell me any book which you consider as a classic. Don't tell me Bible. No, Bible is a classic actually. It can be considered a classic. Yeah. Tell me a classic. William Shakespeare's, his writings are considered classic, right? Okay, everyone can accept William Shakespeare's writings are considered as classic. So why they are considered classic? Their relevance is still there. Okay, you still make you ask Vishal Bharadwaj. Okay, there's a Hindi, for those who don't know, there's a Hindi director, Vishal Bharadwaj. He takes all William Shakespeare's stories, his novels, and make a movie out of them based in UP and Bihar. Fine. So all the English literature, UP and Bihar. So how he is doing it? Like a few of the very famous movies. For example, one of a very famous movie which Vishal Bharadwaj made was Heather, and it was an adaptation of Macbeth. It was an adaptation of Macbeth. It was based in Kashmir. Mr. Bharadwaj also made a movie called as Omkara, which was an adaptation of Othello, and it was based in UP. Okay. Now, when William Shakespeare wrote it and where he wrote it, he wrote it at 16th century in eastern side of England, and where it is made movie in the 21st century, and that also in heartland of India. So geography doesn't matter, and time also doesn't matter. The essence of the story was acceptable in the 16th century. The essence of the story is acceptable in the 21st century. The essence of the story was acceptable in the English society also, and the essence of the story is also acceptable in the Indian society. So classics are those writings which goes beyond the time, which goes behind the geographical nature of the concept. So there are certain essential features, characteristic features of human being. For example, jealousy. For example, selfishness. Okay, these are essential features which are always there in everyone. Okay, if anyone says that or maybe something like a feeling of empathy also, it's not always all the thing bad only, some good features also we have. So feeling of empathy. Okay. So these essential characteristic features of human beings are always there. Okay, no matter which part of the world you are, whether you are a Japanese person or Indian person or American person or European or African, or from Peru or Argentina, these features will always be there. So classics are those writings which focuses on these things. Classics are usually timeless. So you will see, you can say that most of the religious writings, whether it is Bible, whether it is Quran, whether it is Gita, Ramayana, Mahabharata, okay, all the books, they can be considered as classic. I consider Game of Thrones as a classic. Wings of Ice and Fire, classic. Okay, because it makes sense if it is taught to someone in the 19th century. It made sense to someone if in the 21st century, right? So classics are those things. And the important thing is that when you are reading classics, then how you have to read classics. Because when we are going to teach, or we have to going to talk about these scholars, what these scholars have done, they have written books, and these books they have written their political thought. For example, like Plato wrote a book called as Republic, or it is not even a book, it is a set of dialogues between people, but now it is published as a book. So for making it simple, it's a book. So Plato wrote a book called as Republic. In that book, there were conversations among people. Okay. Now, those conversations are in principle implementable even in the 21st century. And that's why it's a classic. Right? Similarly, Hobbes also wrote a book called as Leviathan. Similarly, Prince was written by Machiavelli. Okay. So all these people wrote different books, and these books are mostly considered as classic because they have gone outside the frame of the time, they have gone outside the frame of the geography. Because, for example, you see Karl Marx. Everyone knows Karl Marx? Everyone has heard about him? Karl Marx. Yeah. So who was Karl Marx? Guy who looks like Santa Claus? Fine. No, father of communism. Fine. So in the modern communism, in the sense. So Marx was a German who wrote his most famous book, the Communist Manifesto, while living in London, and it was applied in Russia. Right? He was a German who wrote his book while living in London, and it was applied in Russia. It is going beyond the geographical barriers. A guy who was born and brought up in Germany must have a German mindset. He saw the problems and wrote the book according to German experience and while living in London. And the idea was implemented in Russia. So he must have written something which is very close to all the human beings. That's why it was implementable everywhere. It's a classic. That's how you judge which book is a classic, which isn't. Right? Now, you need to understand that how we are even going to read classics. There's different ways. For example, the world have accepted that there are 3 different ways or acceptable ways in which classics can be read. One is the easiest way, the textualist manner. The textualist approach says that whatever is written, we will follow it. No ups, no down. Just whatever is written, we will accept it. Usually, the religious books and the conservative religious scholars follow this method. For example, you'd say if any conservative religious scholars, they will immediately quote you some paragraph of Bible or some surah number of Quran, or koi doha bata denge, some doha from some Hindi literature or some classics from Hindu idea. Okay? And they're like, look, this is written, you cannot change it. But you can also say that, look, this text was written 1400 years back, this text was written 1600 years back. So instead of just focusing on that thing, like for example, back in 1996, Mullah Umar, who was the head of Taliban, who considered, gave a fatwa that says that Quran has nowhere mentioned about music. So now no Muslim should listen to music. Okay. Or no Muslim should use tape recorders, not music but tape recorders. No Muslim should use tape recorders. The problem is when Quran was written, there was no tape recorders, so that's why they didn't mention it. Okay, so if you take a textualist approach, you'll find yourself in a very difficult situation. Okay, so that is a textualist approach, that I will follow precisely what is written in the text. It has been used in the modern sense also. Like there was a American Supreme Court judge, he passed away, Scalia. He is considered as the father of the legal textualist approach. Okay, but he started reading the American Constitution in that fashion. For example, if you'll see Indian Constitution right now, we do it all the time. We read the Constitution in a contextualist and sometimes interpretive approach. Both are used, but never the textualist approach. For example, if you will see, few days back, Supreme Court of India stated that right to privacy is part of right to life. In Indian Constitution, for those who don't know, Article 21 explains right to life. That is your fundamental right. No one can take away your life without a due process. Okay. So nowhere it's written right to privacy. Okay. But in 2018, in Puttaswamy judgment, Justice Puttaswamy judgment, the Supreme Court said that right to have your privacy is part of right to life. Right? So it's an inherent part of right to life, even if it is nowhere mentioned. So what they did, they interpreted right to life. Okay, so they took a interpretive approach. Right? Many a time, you also go for contextualist approach. Okay, the same rules and regulations will be applied in a different context. Something will change. As I was telling you, for example, we are discussing, we gave you examples of movies which were made by Vishal Bharadwaj. So when he was making these movies, obviously the essence of Othello and Macbeth is there. But if you start making the people of UP and people of Kashmir started speaking, oh, thou shall I, you can't. So there has to be a contextualization. Okay, the sense is, the essence will be there, but they will speak in their own language. Right? So the thing is that classics have to be usually studies in these three perspectives, either textualist approach or interpretive approach or contextualist approach. Okay, now the contextualist approach is, for example, I just gave you the example of Taliban. They usually take the whole writing in the textualist approach. But you also have the Sufi saints in the fold of Islam who said, no. You look into where you are, and in a contextual manner, you can apply the rules and regulations by looking into the idea. Whenever a classic was written, whenever the Bible was written, whenever even the religious text was written, what was the idea with which that text was written? Focus on that. That is also used a lot of time by the Constitution. You will see in many times when the judgment, Supreme Court comes up with, goes to give a judgment, they also go and start looking into the discussions of the Constituent Assembly. Why they do so? They do so because instead of, they said that look, only by going through what is written in Constitution, that is not enough. We also need to understand that what was the mindset of the constitution makers, when they were writing this particular thing. If you can understand their mindset or their main objective, then even if the words have to be changed here and there a little bit, that is acceptable. So that is also approach. That's where the contextualist and interpretive approach comes into action. So here there's a three definitions given, and I really don't think so you have to go beyond this. The textualist approach, it focuses on the plain meaning of the text, usually used in the legal interpretation in the normal day-to-day activities. Interpretive approach, it encompasses social theories and perspective that embrace a view of reality as socially acceptable. Contextualist approach, it emphasizes the context in which an action, utterance or expression occurs. Fine. So contextualist approach comes over there. So one, you need to understand that there are three approaches. These three basic approaches are used for reading of the classics. Okay, which one you will be using? You cannot, and no one should be stagnant on a single way of reading it. Okay, depending upon the usability, you will move from one to another. For example, in the Constitution also, or legal framework also, day-to-day activities are always done with textualist approach. You go to any government office and half of the time what they say, it is how it is written, I will do work like this only. This is what government officials say all the time. So what they are doing, they are taking a textualist approach. That this is what is written, this is what I will do. Nothing less, nothing more. But there have been instances and Supreme Court says, no. You have to understand why it was written, and then you have to interpret it, and you also need to sometimes look into the context of the situation. So that's where the other sections also comes into play. Right? So that is one thing you should know about reading the classics. For example, that means when you are that if you are following this, then following this, one should not call Plato fascist, because when Plato was talking, that was a different world. That's why if you see this thing, like in modern times, a lot of times you will see that someone has tweeted something in 2005 or 2005. There was no Twitter, so 2006, that's when Twitter was formed. So suppose someone tweeted something in 2006. It happens a lot of time. Anyone follows Kevin Hart? Anyone seen Kevin Hart's stand-up comedy? No? Yes? You have seen it. You have seen it? Kevin Hart? No. You know Kevin Hart. You have any people you have heard about Kevin Hart? No. He's a stand-up comedian, okay, based in US. So basically what happened is he has made a joke on Twitter somewhere in 2010. And so in 2018, he was told that he will be anchoring in the annual event of Oscar, the Oscar Prize ceremony. He was going to lead it. A day or two in the news came in, and someone posted his tweet from 2010. Okay, and they started criticizing him, and then it became such a big issue that the Oscar committee has to say, okay, fine, we won't make Mr. Hart as the anchor of the show, and the job was taken away. Now the point is, Kevin Hart said that, look, you need to understand, it was a discussion going on, and in that respect I stated that thing, and I myself don't subscribe to that idea which I stated in 2010. So but what most of the people on Twitter or the pressure group started doing, they took a textualist approach of what Mr. Hart said. Okay, Mr. Hart was talking about taking a contextualist approach, that look, please look into the time and the sphere I was in, why I made that quote, what position I was in, and that's why whatever I said. And he said that I don't subscribe to that idea in present times, but that was not acceptable. So this is also something which you need to understand, that these approaches plays a very vital role in how you understand things. For example, another thing, for example, I have given you a name called as J.S. Mill. Okay, so J.S. Mill is also considered as one among the initial feminist scholars who started talking about rights of the women back in 1859. He talked about the equal rights for women back in 1859. Okay, so for those who don't know, the women in United Kingdom, Britain, got the equal voting right in 1928 only. Okay, not before that. Now Mill was talking about giving equal rights to women back in 1859. Okay. Now in 1990s, there was this scholar, her name was Karol Bagh. Now Karol Bagh criticized Mill that, look, yes, Mr. Mill has talked about the female rights, but he has not talked enough. So Bateman looked towards Mill's writing from the 1990s perspective. Okay, he should have went back and looked at, okay, what was happening in 1850s, and then what Mr. Mill was talking about. Okay, so instead of taking a textualist approach that, okay, Mr. Mill has stated X in 1859, this is not enough as per 1990. That is not enough. You have to take the context of things. So that is something you have to understand first of all before going into these writings of the classics, that many a time you will feel like this is absurdity. Like just I told you a few minutes back, Plato talking about keeping all the children together. Sounds absurd. Okay, but you don't have to accept it. Even people back then didn't accept it. But you need to understand that under what circumstances, what scenario he is talking about these methods. Okay, so that's why these three methods have to be studied first of all. Okay, now when you know these three things, the difference, that how it is done, the textualist, contextualist and interpretive approach, then we can jump into the basic story. Now let's move to the basic story of Western political thought. Now, where it all started and what really happened. So, if you see, there is a map made in your handout. Have you seen this, people? There's a map. Yeah, this one. Seen this map? Yes or no? Yeah. Everyone got it? It's there in the handout. So what is this? Where this place is? Mediterranean, Greece. Okay, right now if you'll see Greece, so it's that region. That's this whole place. Athens, Attica, these were nearby area. This Sparta. This picture is shows a period from 600 BC to 500 BC. That period. Okay. And this was the time when I was telling you initially, the city-states, those city-states have been established. Okay, these city-states were basically traders, and all these people were living here. And these places were not very big. It's like 5,000 people, 6,000, 5,000 families, 6,000 families, 8,000 families, 10,000 families. That is what the strength of these places was. Okay, now the story goes as in that there were two city-states, big city-states. One was Athens and one was Sparta. Okay, we've seen the movie 300. 300. Everyone has seen 300? Seen 300? Haven't followed Gerard Butler? Okay, fine. It's a pretty famous movie. Okay, yeah. So I've seen 300. Everyone, how two people have? You have seen Gerard Butler, Lena Headey. Okay, it's a movie where it is seen that the Sparta is a place where the people living there are martial race, a kind of a martial race, fighting force and these. And the Persians, who are basically from Iran, the Persian king Xerxes attacks them, and 300 of the Spartan men went and fought the Iranian or Persian forces. Okay, so that's one story. And the fight between Xerxes and Spartans actually happened. It's not a lie. But the movie is far more made up than actually what happened. Now, so we are not going to talk about that thing, but yes, that's why I'm telling you about Sparta, because in the movie it is shown that the Spartans are a martial race, that the fighting community from the very birth, they are into the pits, fight and train and this and that. That is true about Sparta. Athens was another, one city was Sparta, one city was Athens, and both were city-states. The Spartans used to live in this manner, the martial manner, that everyone has to train, everyone has to work, and Athens was more of a chill place. People used to have fun, maybe, like, okay, no need to go to exercise every morning, like normal things. And in this city of Athens, there was a democratic model which is used. So there was a democracy. Okay, there was a democracy. And this is where the whole issue started. Now, in this city, since there was democracy, there were representatives of the people, and all decisions were taken through the democratic model, through voting only. And voting was also done. In this city, there were the people who were the teachers. They were usually called as a sophist. Okay, sophist, S-O-P-H-I-S-T, sophist. Now, who were the sophists? And now understand this, this will make sense to you. It was very relatable. Sophists were the teachers. Okay, and these teachers used to teach people the skills they require in their life. Okay, and they were not doing it with some greater idea for the society. They were not doing it with the intention that the society will become good if everyone is well taught and well read and has his skill set. They were doing it for the individual's benefit. And usually the idea goes like that sophists were working for money. So basically you pay me and I will train you, and you can use that training to excel in your life. Now that's a very transactional relation right now, but for what purpose I'm training you? So again, sophists were again and again criticized that sophists used to train only a group of people who belong to the aristocratic class in the society. Those people who have money, they used to send their sons to the sophist, and sophists used to teach them, and the most important thing, in the art of rhetoric. In the art of rhetoric. What is rhetoric? Sophists used to teach people in the art of rhetorics. What is rhetorics? They were taught in other spheres also, but mostly the most important thing is rhetorics. What is rhetorics? Yeah, basically the art of speaking, oratory. Okay. Now, obviously, what will happen? There's this. What the leaders do, that's what they do. They are good at speaking. So they will tell you that we'll do this and this and this and that, and you'll vote for them, and they do nothing. Okay. So it again, this same thing was observed. Now there were people in the society who started criticizing these sophists for this thing that, look, you people have taught some people, and those people have got elected. You people taught these people how to get elected, they got elected, and they are not doing good for the society. So the ultimate aim, that is to make the society a better place, that is not being achieved. But these people are working only for their individual benefit. Okay. So sophists are always the people in the society who always kept the individual glory on and above the societal glory. And that is why a lot of people in this Athenian society criticize the sophists, that only for money you are teaching some Mr. X a particular skill set. He is using that skill set and becoming some big leader, and then what he is doing? Nothing. So ultimately the society is at loss. So for this very thing, sophists were always criticized. So your handout has a definition that Sophia basically means wisdom, and these people were the people who had wisdom, but they were trading it for their individual benefit, and they were giving it to people who were not doing any good on the large scale for the people. Okay. Now that is the one thing which you need to know. Now in these places, not only in Athens, but Athens and other nearby area also, there were a lot of scholars who were living. Now we will start from here, first of all from Socrates only, and we will talk a bit about Socrates. So if you'll see in your handout again, okay, so it's written Plato as father of political philosophy, Aristotle as father of political science. Okay, and over here it's written that Plato, and there's an arrow mark that comes from Heraclitus, Parmenides, and Socrates, and that's where Plato comes in. Your syllabus only defines Plato. Okay, your syllabus only defines Plato and starts with Plato only. All these scholars who are written on the top are extra scholars which you need to understand for Plato. Now what it is and where it all comes, we'll start with Socrates, and let me explain you a few things. That even before Socrates, there were two most important scholars about whom you have to study, and those are Parmenides and Heraclitus. What Heraclitus stated? Any idea, anyone? No? Fine. So Heraclitus said that the world is always in a flux. Everything is continuously moving. There's a very famous quote by Heraclitus where he stated, you cannot put your feet in the same water twice. He said, you cannot put your feet in the same water twice. What it meant? Try to decipher it. He said that you cannot keep your feet in the same water twice. What it must have meant? Any idea? What it must have meant? He said that you cannot keep your feet in the same water twice. Think about it. Look, you can someone told me that suppose there is a flowing river. I kept my feet in the water. Within a second, that particular molecules, that water moved forward. So next time when I'm going to keep my feet in the same water, basically it's a different water because that water has moved forward. And then you will say, no issues, sir. I'll take water in a tub. Now the same water is there. But okay, fine, you take the tub water, but still the time has gone. The very few seconds which when you used your feet to put in the water, that seconds, that time, that dimension is gone. So it's always in flux. Everything is in flux. Fine. So that is a basic concept of Heraclitus. That is what Heraclitus stated. Now, if you look at the mind map which have been given to you, look at the Heraclitus mind map. Mind map, if you go, you can read it or not. Mind map, it's visible or not? Not at all. They have printed too small. Wait. Page number 6 now. Yeah. Okay, it's here, Heraclitus from the Ionian school. He was a philosopher who believed in the concept of change and the idea that everything is in a state of flux. He argued no man ever steps in the same river twice, which illustrates his belief in the constant change of the world. Okay. Now similarly, there is another scholar, his name is Parmenides of Ilya. You just need to understand Parmenides. Parmenides was a philosopher who believed in the concept of eternal unchanging reality. He argued that the change and the motion were illusions and that the universe was actually a single static indivisible whole. So, have you ever heard this notion that we all belong to that one universal self? Many people say that that is also part of Indian basic Vedic idea and all that. Vedanta has that concept that we all belong to that oneness. Everything goes back to God and comes out of God. Okay. So Parmenides coming not from the concept of God, but he came up with a similar concept that look, whatever you are thinking is moving is basically illusion. This doesn't make sense. This is not important. And the reality of the world is always one. Okay, the reality of the world is always one. There is nothing changing. It's all stagnant. Whatever you are thinking is changing is nothing but it's just there. It's not reality. It's all superficial. Whatever changes, like for example, human behavior, the essential human behavior is all the same. Whatever you feel like, okay, no, this person is different, this person is different, these are superficial things. Individually, all humans have the same thing. So essence is same. That's where Parmenides was coming. Okay, so these were the two basic scholars about whom you have to know at this point. We'll talk about other of them one by one whenever they need, and you can refer to the mind map. Remember, people have a WhatsApp group or not till now? Do you people have a WhatsApp group? No? Huh? You have an official group? It's a WhatsApp group or what? Student group. Okay, I'll just ask them to make a WhatsApp group. Okay, you'll have the PDF also, so you can zoom and get this mind map, or I'll tell them to get it printed on a A3 sheet and give it to you. So now this is the society where Socrates was living. Now you come to the page, I think so, page number 7. Come to the page number 7. No, page number, what is page? Page number 7. Can you see Socrates? Fine. So there is a basic lifeline what all happened with Socrates in his life. Now, this will not ask you in the examination, I am telling you already, but you need to understand this to make sense of things. So who was Socrates? He was, just listen to this. If you want, you can read the thing back at home. He was a normal guy, not a very well-to-do, coming from a normal family, not a very well-to-do family. His father was a standard stone worker. In the initial days, he also worked in the army of the Athens. Okay, so he actually came to prominence because he was a foot soldier. And from being a foot soldier, he fought excellent in the Battle of Delium. At 424 BC, there was a battle in which he fought excellently. So he was all in limelight. It happens all the time. When if someone got a Paramveer Chakra or a Mahavir Chakra, obviously that person will be in limelight. Something very similar happened with Socrates, that he fought well. He was all in limelight. And when he got into limelight, people realized that, look, Socrates is not that simple a man. He talks, and he talks a lot. Oh, he just talked too much. Okay, and he used to talk. So in the initial stages, people saw that Socrates used to pick up on people. And now, since he was famous, initially people started talking to him. And he was always talking, initial days, he was always talking to people about erotic love, sexual issues. So initial people said, okay, fine, let's have fun, let's talk. But very soon he started talking about other things also. He started talking about education. He started talking about religion. He started also talking about politics. Okay. In one of a scholar, not scholar, but a person of his time also stated that Socrates is telling the youth that go back to your home and beat your parents. I really don't know whether Socrates said that or not, but that was also an accusation on him. So Socrates was talking on these things all the time, and like, as long as, like, look, that's even acceptable in today's time. If you're talking about erotic love, frankly, no one has any issue, believe me. The problem is when you start talking about religion and politics and education. Again, the same thing. Even now, you start talking too much about education, that education is bad, education is bad, education is bad. Government will find out something against your own education. When you will talk too much about religion, you will be dead. Don't. So same thing, similar issues. Now very soon you will see that Socrates started picking up people on the road talking about these issues, and it is famously said that he used a method. What method was? Any idea? Dialectics. Okay, dialectics. What is dialectics? Dia means two. Dia word comes from two. Lectics means speaking, your tongue. So when two people talk, argumentation, it is called as dialectics. Socrates always used this method to talk to people. Okay, and he made sure that he was a well-read person. He knew a lot of stuff, but he always showed himself as someone who had no clue. And he always used to start conversation from people that you tell me what you think about it. And then people will start having their opinion, and then he'll like, but don't you think that this is not right and this is right? And within 2 to 3 minutes or 5 minutes of conversation, people will be like, yeah, seems like I'm wrong. And he used to do this with all the people. Don't you, like, anyone has lived in hostels or flatmates? You people must be living with your flatmates or hostels, or like every house, every couple of friends must be having one friend who do these things, that all of a sudden will come from somewhere and, do you know this? And you know that this person knows this thing. Still asking. Happens. Do you people love them? No. Wait. Socrates was killed, by the way, by the order of the state. So that exactly happened with Socrates. Socrates used to do this thing, and his method is very much appreciated and is even used now also. In present day and times also, the Socratic method is used extensively. Okay. The whole dialectic things is known extensively and used extensively around the world. Even in the, for example, Gandhi has used it. Martin Luther King has used it. This whole method of first making an argument, then refuting the argument, then supporting the argument, and then finding you to be wrong. First, what he will say, that he will actually frame an argument which is stated by you only. Then he will refute the argument. He will say, no, you are wrong. Then you will say, okay, maybe I'm wrong. Then he will give an argument in support of your argument. You will again start feeling like, okay, seems like I'm right. And then he will reject your argument again. And you will like, I don't know. Right? So this is a method of refutement which he does extensively. We'll talk about that argument. There's an example of this also, Socratic method. We'll come to it. But so basically in your handout it's written that the basic thing which ultimately he started talking about, which created issues, was education, democracy and religion. Now, the most important thing, what do you think? Socrates supported democracy or opposed democracy? Take a wild guess. Supported. He opposed democracy. He hated democracy. He said, like, people are buffoons, they don't know anything, why you are making them participate in the process? And up to a great extent, up till very late in the recent times also, this is acceptable. Like, look, have you ever heard about this notion that, look, voters are uneducated? Okay, even in like, we live in a representative democracy, we don't live in a direct democracy. One of the major reason in support of representative democracy, that if you start a direct democracy, at least in representative democracy, you know that, okay, there were 543 people. Okay, even if 543 people don't know something, you can provide them concerned text. You will explain those 543 things, that, look, this is the issue, this is one argument, this is another argument, then that person can take a decision. But in a direct democracy, can you explain each and everything in detail to 1 billion people? Suppose ISRO has to launch a 500 rockets, and now fund has to be released to ISRO. Now, the question is that ISRO is asking suppose that's just a hypothetical situation, that ISRO has to release 100 rockets, and the cost of those rockets is $5 billion. Now, ISRO is asking for that money, Parliament has to decide, and some parliamentarian will say that, look, $5 billion is a huge amount of money that could be invested in India and other resources. Sending rocket is not something of great importance to us right now. We have so many people below poverty line, this $5 billion can be useful somewhere else. But at the same time, a lot of people will also say that, look, technical advancement is also very important. Unless and until we do it, in the long run, we will be at disadvantageous position. These two arguments are there. Now, 543 people can be given pros and cons for both the points, and they can make a decision. But do you really think, if you have to explain it to almost 1 billion voting age people, that should ISRO be given $5 billion or not? Can they take a decision? No, those people are unaware of the working of ISRO. Right? So he was coming from this perspective that, look, people at large don't know the nitty-gritties of policy formulation, and therefore getting them involved through the model of democracy is a futile exercise, and therefore democracy itself is an acceptable model. Democracy should not be followed by the country or any state. So Socrates was an opponent of democracy. Okay, he was not a supporter of democracy. Okay, it is also seen that Socrates, since I'll explain you in short, because you don't have to go into it for too much detail. But one thing important about Socrates is, since Socrates was criticizing, and what he was criticizing, the most important thing is he was also criticizing religion. And in what way he was criticizing the religion? He was asking especially the people in youth, to challenge or question the faith. And no one likes to be questioned, specifically the faith. Okay, so when he was asking the youth that you ask the question to people, there was a very famous argument where Socrates told some of the men in their early 20s that you should challenge your parents, and the children said that, but they are parents, they are our elders, so we cannot question them. And then Socrates immediately said that, look, just because they are older than you is not enough of a reason for not to challenge them. If they know, they have some extra knowledge, they know something well, then it's fine. But just because they were born before you, this is not good enough of a reason to not question them. Okay, but imagine if someone starts following it and goes back and questions their parents, then they might be beaten up. Okay, so you need to understand that this is just the one part of the thing. Now he also started questioning the faith, the religion. He also started asking questions that why certain practices of the religion are done. Okay, and that's when he was accused of irreverence. Okay. Irreverence is basically concept which says taking stance or going in opposition to the faith. Okay, so he was accused of irreverence and a case was filed against him, and he was called into the council meeting where all, in a democratic manner, all the representative gathered, and he was asked to explain his position regarding the faith. Now, understand this point. Socrates nowhere stated that God doesn't exist. Right? Because a lot of confusion happens on this, because usually this is not taught in the classes. People start with Plato and just tell that Socrates is someone who was found out, was killed because of irreverence. So people always think that Socrates said something, that he doesn't accept God or authority of God, or he said that God doesn't exist, but it is nothing like that. So Socrates never stated that he doesn't have faith in God. Socrates just said that there are certain practices in the faith which are unacceptable or should only be followed if a rational reasoning is provided for it. Okay, so Socrates nowhere stated that there is no God. That's first thing you need to understand, right? And so, but the case was anyway filed, and the case went on. The finding of the case was this, that he was found guilty for irreverence by the council, this democratic council. And he was given two options, that he should leave Athens and go wherever he wants, or if he'll stay in Athens, then he will be killed. So his followers, his students, because he used to run a kind of an institution, a kind of a school, so his students and everyone, they told him that, sir, please, you leave the Athens, the country. But he was said that no, I'm not going to do anything like this. And even if this democratic council is going to kill me, okay, the blame will be on them in the longer run. And that is precisely what happened. So finally, he was told to drink a poison. The poison was famously called as hemlock. So he was made to drink hemlock and die. Now, this is where the story starts. Okay, this is all you need to know about basics about Socrates, who he was, what happened with him. So now, the curse on democracy, even now it is acceptable, that democracy is the killer of Socrates, one of the finest mind the world ever had. Okay, so the basic idea that since we live in a liberal democracy, or as long a bit of illiberal, but mostly liberal, so we live in a liberal system, and we always think that liberal democracy is the way out. But here is an example from the finest of the time, which shows that the democracy will not always be right. There have been instances, there will be more instances when democracy can be wrong also. Okay, so that's Socrates, the incidents with Socrates is an example of that. Now when this happened with Socrates, then all his followers also started hating democracy. So you will see that the student of Socrates, who was Plato was a student of Socrates, he also started hating democracy. So you will see in his writing, Plato throughout, through and through, criticized democracy. All his principle, ideas, concept, whichever he came up with, in that he criticized democracy. Right? So that's where we are coming from. Now, few things you need to understand that your handout also has these points. That, for example, the first thing, the famous concept of the strangeness of Socrates, or Socratic strangeness. So it is always, all the texts write this, that Socrates was an ugly man. Okay. So it is always said like Socrates was very ugly, and he used to wear any clothes and just roam around barefooted in the city. Okay, start talking to random people on the road and these kind of things. So many people also used to call him madman back in the day. Now, you need to understand here, it's written in your text, please read it. In ancient Greece, beauty had predefined standards. That is stately, proportionate, sculpturous, all those ideas. Now these ideas were not acceptable to Socrates. Okay, and that is where he started questioning them. Okay, and that's all how it all started. So that's one thing. Now Socrates very famously stated that anyone who used to confuse and stun the fellow beings to the extent of frustration unless they realize their ignorance. Now his idea is that the whole concept of knowledge and ignorance, okay, and he kept on talking to people on roadsides unless they accepted, okay fine, I am ignorant, I don't know this. Okay, so that also created a lot of issue regarding Socrates. Now one more important thing which you need to understand is, it is famously said that Socrates is someone who has two natures. Why two nature? There was a person who is a Socrates, historically he existed, and when Plato, his student, wrote his writings, in his writings he wrote about Socrates. Whatever we know about Socrates is through various writings, mostly of Plato, one or two other writers also. And therefore there is a difference between the real historical Socrates and the character Socrates which is written in Plato's writing. Okay, so many of the scholars later on have criticized Plato, that look, Plato, what he has done, he has a perception of Socrates and that is what he has written, not the real Socrates. Okay, so that is an argument you should be aware of. Now the most important thing, one of the most famous quote of Socrates is he once famously said that I know that I know nothing. Okay, he said that he was aware of his ignorance, and that is kind of the one thing one expects one knowledgeable person only can say, that he knows that he is ignorant, he knows that he doesn't know it all. Okay, so that's where the whole idea came. Now the Socrates stated the first steps towards being knowledgeable is acceptance of your ignorance. You accept that you are ignorant, you don't know everything, and you will never be able to know everything. That is the very first thing you should be aware of, and that's the first thing. Now Socrates has stated that he had cognitive achievements, but when it comes to the domain of wisdom, he is not very well capable. Now what are cognitive achievements? What are cognitive tools? Like analysis of something, okay, analyzing a thing, okay, rationally looking into it. These are your cognitive abilities. Okay, you look at something and you said no, this is correct, this is not correct. This is your cognitive ability, right? But what beyond it? Is it good or bad? You don't know, because you don't have a standard of good and bad. You don't know what is good, what is bad, right? I can point out the characteristics of a person, but don't ask me whether this person is good or whether this person is bad. I don't know, because I am not the person who is going to decide the benchmark what is good and what is bad. So he had the cognitive ability. He can tell that, okay, these are 5 characteristics of a person. This person has this much height, this person is fair or darker in color, this person has this type of hair, this person talks in this language. But I don't know this person is good or bad, because I have not made the rules that this height is acceptable height or not, this color is acceptable color or not, this way of speaking is acceptable or not. That is not my work. So he was good at cognitive skills, but beyond that, no. So that is very important. If you accept that, life becomes easier. Now, one important thing which can be asked to you directly in the examination is the concept of Socratic idea of knowledge. Socratic idea of knowledge. Now, what is, I have just told you a few minutes back that the first step towards being knowledgeable is accepting that you are ignorant. The first step towards being knowledgeable is accepting that you are ignorant. If that is the situation, then if Socrates is saying that there is a concept of knowledge, then what it should be? So, in a one-word answer, Socrates stated very simply that what is knowledge? Knowledge is being virtuous. Okay? Knowledge is being virtuous. Okay? Knowledge is virtue. Now you might ask, what is virtue then? Okay, if you are virtuous, you are knowledgeable. Now what is virtue? Any idea? In modern day and time, what do you think is virtue? Explain. What is virtue? Any idea, anyone? Any clue, anyone? Are you have certain virtue now? You are an honest person, that's a virtue. Honesty is a virtue or not? Or anything else? So think about it. Like, society has decided, every society is decided that X, Y, Z, these are certain virtues. Okay, like having empathy towards people is a virtue. Okay, behaving modestly is a virtue. Working efficiently to the task assigned to you is a virtue. These are the virtues which is acceptable by modern society, right? If you do these things, you are considered as virtuous, right? Now, he says that a knowledgeable person is one who performs the virtuous action, as in the role which have been assigned to you by the society. If you perform them, you are virtuous. The roles which are assigned to you by the society, if you perform them without questioning beyond a realm, you are virtuous. You are positioning, you are doing the work which is good for you, good for society in the longer run. That is virtue. That is okay. Now, ultimate aim is always eudaimonia. Now, if you just see on the page number 10, I think so, there is a concept written as per Socrates, the task of philosophy is to make a human being better. The Socrates theory is assimilated to an ethical theory called as eudaimonia, as it appeals to a happiness as an undisputed final aim of our action. Now, eudaimonia is state of goodwill, when the whole society is working towards the goodwill of the whole society at large. The society, such a society will be called as a eudaimonia. Okay, that is the effective. Like, have you ever heard, like in North India at least, again, the Indian government always says that what we want to make a Ram Rajya. Have anyone heard that? No? Yes? Fine. If you'll ever read, if you ever hear Prime Minister Modi's speech, he will always say, we want to make a Ram Rajya. Okay. If you see the Western scholars, they will always say, we want to make a utopian state. Okay. If you'll read the Pakistani politicians, they will always say that we want to make a Madina ki riyasat. Okay. So all these people have this conceptualization that what is a perfect state. Okay, so that perfect state in the Greek society was eudaimonia, and all the work which is happening to achieve eudaimonia. As I told you already, that all the political philosophers, ultimately their political thought is targeted towards making a better place, and that better place is eudaimonia in the Greek times. Okay, now here you will see he argued through virtues one can live their life in the best possible manner, following the virtues. Like I told you, the virtues of 21st century, I just told you. The virtues of why the virtues are a bit confusing here is the virtues were intentionally not mentioned in your syllabus. Okay, because the virtues of Greek society was different. For example, having a slave is unvirtuous, totally unvirtuous right now. But having a slave in the Greek society was not unvirtuous, it was like normal, fine. So the virtue can change, it's relative. but you have to be in sync with the virtues, acceptable virtues of your state in which the society you are living. Okay, so the classic idea of Socrates is knowledge is being virtuous, knowledgeable is being virtuous, knowledge is virtue. Your virtue, you will be considered as knowledgeable in 21st century as per Socrates if you follow or if you maintain the virtues of 21st century society. The virtuous man in the Greek society would have been someone who accepted the Greek virtuous behavior, which would be different from the 21st century virtue. Okay, now understood? Yeah, so that is why it is called as knowledge is nothing but being virtuous. Knowledgeable is virtuous. Okay, he also added that no man does evil voluntarily and all virtues are one. Now this is very important. If you are doing anything evil, or for example even in modern times, you meet a terrorist and you ask them, do you really think any terrorist will ever tell you that they are doing wrong? If you ever have got a chance to meet Osama bin Laden, do you really think UBL would tell you that the attack on WTC was wrong? He will give you ample amount of reasoning that look, this happened, that happened, Americans have done this and that and this and that, and therefore we have done it, right? Similarly, if you meet anyone who is considered terrorist in modern sense of the word, that person will give you ample amount of explanations that look, I am not evil, what I am doing is for the good, greater good, always. That is precisely what Socrates is saying, that you will never find anyone who is doing evil knowingly. No one in the world will do evil knowingly. Okay, they will always think that what they are doing is right. And that's where the confusion of virtue and knowledge comes in. Okay, so how you will decide that what you are doing is evil or not, or virtuous or not? By looking into it, that whether it is in line with the greater good of the society or not. That is how you decide it. Okay, so that's one thing you need to understand. Now these outright pronouncements, Socrates have some mention, like one, human excellence is constituted by the virtue, vice is merely the result of ignorance, the correct response to crime is therefore not punishment but education. These were the basic ideas which Socrates always followed, or which he pronounced. Now so that's one thing you should know. Okay, these things are done. The idea of Socrates, okay, Socratic irony is done. Chalo. So basic idea is done. Understood this much? Is it made sense? Socratic ignorance and Socrates knowledge is virtue. Knowledge is virtue is a question which have been asked directly in the previous year papers. Like in the examination, they will just ask you a question directly, like stating like this, very straightforward. Comment in 150 words. Knowledge is virtue. For 10 marks. Okay, this is how they will ask you this question. So how you will write 150 words? You can write very easily that this knowledge is virtue is an argument which has been accepted to be propounded by Socrates during his time. Through this, he tried to highlight is who is a knowledgeable person in the society. Knowledgeable person in the society is one who is being virtuous, who is in line with the virtues of the society and following those virtues with the aim of establishing eudaimonia. If you can use if you use the word eudaimonia, it will be good for you, because obviously keywords and those things matter, but those things overall over the time period it will evolve. So this is a basic idea which can be asked in the examination directly. Okay, now come back to page number 8. It is written the primary source of knowledge, what all we know about Socrates. Okay, so whatever information we know about Socrates, where we have got that information. So there are 3 primary sources of knowledge about Socrates. Okay, number 1 is Aristophanes. There was a person living at that time Xenophon, and then Plato. Now, Aristophane is someone who knew him in his early age, okay, Socrates during his youth, and what all information we know about that he went and fought and then got into prominence, all that we got from the writing of Aristophane. Then in his later life, Xenophon has written, Socrates was known to adjust conversation based on particular thing. So the whole idea of how he used his technique of dialectics, that is highlighted by Xenophon. And effectively Plato used Socrates extensively, because all the things which Plato has written in his lifetime, which we'll discuss later on, in that he has never written from his own perspective. Okay, he has written it from the perspective of Socrates. So for example, if Plato has to write a concept, observation, suppose someone asks what is justice, so Plato will not write what is justice and go on writing answer that look, justice means this or that and like that. No, Plato will say, okay, fine, the character Socrates thinks that justice is this. So by doing so, we don't know in modern time that whether it was Plato's observation about a thing or it was Socrates' observation which Plato has heard and now has written it down. We don't know, and we will never get to know. And that is why there is a difference between Platonic Socrates and historic Socrates. We don't know what Socrates really have thought. Whatever we know from the writings of Plato. So that's Plato's perspective on Socrates. So that is also written, you can go through it. Now coming to the Socratic method, again page number 9 if you go. So I have done one example also of Gandhian thing. Like for example, if you'll see the 4-step thing is, first you restate what is obviously the argument, then you reject the argument, okay, but then you conclude with the support of the argument, okay, and then finally you conclude. So for example, the first statement here is written, Gandhi argued, the British claim that their rule in India is for the benefit and progress of Indian people, okay. Gandhi argued that the British claim that their rule in India is for the benefit and progress of Indian people. Then Gandhi went on to say that, but is this really the case? No. Majority of Indians are living in poverty and suffering from exploitation. So the argument, which was British argument, was rejected because yes, there are enough, the majority of Indian people are living in poverty. Then Gandhi went on and supported the argument, because the British economic policies have led to the destruction of Indian industries, and that is why we are in a poverty-ridden condition. And then he concluded, therefore it is clear that British have not done what they say they have done. So first you make the statement, which is opposing statement, then you reject the statement, then you give a statement in support of your rejection, and then you conclude. These are the 4 steps, which sounds very simple, I understand, but this, if you ever follow in your oratory skill, this works fine. It's a human mind works like this. First of all, the argument, which is your opposition's argument, you state that argument, then you reject that argument, then you write or you say a statement in support of your rejection, and then you say whatever you have to, and other side won't have anything to say against it. And that is a Socratic principle which is used right from the time of Socrates. All big scholars, all big leaders, politicians have used it. Barack Obama has used it. Even on the negative side, you will see Adolf Hitler has used it. Gandhi has used it. Okay, everyone uses it. So opposition argument, you reject the argument, you make a statement in support of your rejection, and then you conclude by rejecting the main argument. That is the Socratic model. Okay. So that's one thing you should understand. Ignorance is done. Socratic priority of definition. Yeah. Socrates also focused on one thing. Before reading anything, you should know the basic definition of that thing. Without knowing the basic definition, never go into details, anything else. You should first of all read the definition. So many scholars have argued that Socrates prioritized an epistemological principle. Epistemology means the study of knowledge. Okay. So epistemological principle asserting that a person must first know the definition of a property and then go into details of knowing the what and how it works. Okay. Now Plato, Socrates was also known as an ironist, means as in the method I have told you, that what he does, first he, whatever your observation is, he will repeat your observation and then he rejects the observation and then he gives an argument in support of the rejection. So what he is creating a situation of a irony. Okay, so that is something which is he is very famous for. Now this is all what you need to know. Final point, Socrates, his observation on religion. Now his major observation on religion is written here in your handout also, but let me again just tell you. First of all, he never rejected the presence of the God. The only thing he rejected is that the means and tools which are used, okay, in the process of faith or religion, they should be questioned. Okay, so the rational faith he doesn't have a problem with. He challenged the views of his time and his critique reshaped the religious discourses for sure. Okay, he highlighted that the sacrifices which are made to the god are of no use. Okay, Plato in his famous text Euthryphia has highlighted these things. He even rejected the traditional Greek theology, arguing something is good because it is the will of the god, or because it's good, it's the will of the god. Now this is an argument he came up with. For example, it makes easy. It's all the time it says like, have anyone heard about the famous quote called as Satyamev Jayate? What it means? What Satyamev Jayate is the national emblem. It's written under the national emblem. What it means? Truth always prevails. Sorry? Truth always prevails. That Satyamev Jayate means truth always prevails. If I'll start saying that what prevails is the truth, one argument is truth always prevails. I'll say that what prevails is the truth. Then the whole thing goes wild, no? It sounds very good when we say truth always prevails, but the moment I say, okay, that what prevails is the truth, we never look in the other side, whatever is there, we accept it. Then it's get a negative connotation. He was also saying on the same line that instead of the basic idea that something is good because it's the will of the god, or something or because it's good and therefore it is the will of the god. Okay, so don't accept exactly the same thing which Renaissance scholars accepted, that you don't think too much about the will of the god. Whatever is good will be the will of the god. Okay, so that is also thing which he propounded. And after Socrates was killed, Plato wrote a book, or basically back in those days books were not written, discourse. In his discourse called as Apology. And apology in modern times we usually see as a synonymous to sorry, but apology in Greek was meant in defense. Apology doesn't meant sorry, apology means in defense. So in his famous discourse Apology, Plato went on to define that what was the Socrates, his observations and his ideas were. And in Plato's Apology, Socrates says the jurors that he acknowledges gods more than his accusers. In other texts, he showed a clear belief in the immortality of the soul. In other writings also, he has accepted that soul exists. So the very basic notion which many a time a lot of people think, that he didn't had any he has never given any acceptance to the presence of God or the transmigration and these kind of ideas, those are wrong. Socrates never have rejected the presence of God. Socrates has also never rejected the idea of transmigration or presence of soul. Okay, those things are there. The only thing was that he was challenging the way faith was working in the society. Okay, so that's one thing. Now the last topic which we have to do is the Socratic philosophy of politics. Okay, now the most important thing is Socrates' way of doing politics was very simple. he never really cared of what people used to think. The worst form of politics you can do, but that's how he did it. So Socrates never focused much on what people used to think, and his main and only focus was on the idea that what is good in the larger sense. Okay, so he never focused on public support, but highlighted what is best for the society. Again, best for the society means making the society a better place. Effective idea is that only. Okay, his aversion from the established democratic assemblies was well known to everyone, because he considered the extensive participation on democratic lines to be invaluable, because obviously everyone in the society didn't had the fundamental understanding to participate in the policy making. So that's a basic idea. Okay, Socrates is well known to be the first person to do civil disobedience, because there have been instances. For example, there was a time in between when the leadership of the democratic Athens has said that Socrates will not be allowed to talk to anyone lesser or younger than 30 years of age, because he used to teach people things which society didn't accept it. But then he used to hide, and there was a famous instance when he was on the way for his final hearing, and where he was to be given the order that he will be killed. On the way, he met few boys or girls, like young age people coming in, and he stopped there and he started discussing some random stuff. Like, though that will carry on, let me just discuss something. So he was fond of doing these things. Okay. Now, so he was obviously given the opportunity that if he just leave Athens, go somewhere else, he won't be killed. But he said, no, kill me, I won't go anywhere. So you will see that a sense of civil disobedience, okay, which have been used a lot of time by a lot of other political leaders around the world, even in India. But he is the instigator of civil disobedience. And when I'm saying civil disobedience, it doesn't mean the civil disobedience of the government, but even the disobedience of all the public in the society. Okay, because Athens was a direct democracy. It was not like in India when civil disobedience happened. The Indian leadership, in the freedom struggle, Gandhi, Nehru, Subhash, these people were not fighting against the Indian people. They were fighting against the colonial government. But here, this person is actually fighting the whole society itself. Look, this is right, so this is right. Doesn't matter. Okay, anything else. So many scholars have considered him to be a liberal, because he talked about the mutual benefiting relationship between the city and the citizen. So he is also considered a lot of time as an individualist. Okay, and individualism is a concept which started very later on and not in the initial phase. Everyone, whether it is Plato and other scholars also, have given the society or the state much more importance than anything else. But that was not Socrates. Socrates said, no, individual, and that individual citizen and the city have there's a transactional relationship. The individual will be benefited by the city, and the city will be benefited by the citizen. Right? So that is something you need to understand about his sense of politics. So you need to know this much about Socrates only, and only this much. Questions will not be asked, or very rarely will not be asked directly on Socrates. Let me tell you, the only thing which can be asked is that one thing I just told you, that knowledge is virtue. Okay, comment on that or something like that. Otherwise, the questions will be mostly framed on Plato. But in the writings of Plato, Socrates is used as a character. So unless and until you actually knew about Socrates, reading Plato will not make much of a sense. Right? So that's why we have covered this thing. There are few quotations written by Socrates. The unexamined life is not worth living for human beings. The only true wisdom is knowing you have nothing, you know nothing. There is only one good, knowledge, and one evil, that is ignorance. And education is the kindling of a flame, not the filling of a vessel. Some quotations which can be explained one by one. Okay, so read them. We'll wrap the lecture now. In the next lecture, tomorrow is the next lecture or day after tomorrow? You have the schedule now? Give me a second. Tomorrow is the lecture. Tomorrow is the lecture. So we'll meet tomorrow and we'll start with Plato. Okay. So once Plato will be done. Most probably tomorrow or day after tomorrow. 2 days it will take to complete the whole Plato. It's a longer topic. It's not a smaller one. Fine. That's it. Any other queries, questions till now? Sorry? Third para. Okay. He even rejected traditional Greek theology. This one, arguing something is good because it's the will of the god, or because it's good, it's the will of the god. No. Yeah, the Greek theology says whatever is the will of the god is good. That's the standard Greek theology. That is also the standard Indian theology. That whatever is happening because God wants this to happen. Another perspective, the rational perspective, will be whatever I am doing is good, and since it's good, God likes it. That's a simple way of saying it. Does it make sense? Look, understand this thing again. What is the will of the God? Whatever is the will of the God is good. That's one notion. The another notion is whatever is good is the will of the God. Fine? Any other queries? Done? Fine? Fine? Okay. Knowledge is virtue. This is the most important thing. Knowledge is virtue, because the concept of knowledge will be further evolved by Plato also. So basic principle, what is Socrates used to think about knowledge, that is very important. Fine. Okay. Thank you everyone.